If you've got your Bible, turn to Luke 16. Now, this one is a really difficult passage. If you remember, I said last week that I'd asked my good friend, retired pastor Keith, who's he's pretty good on everything in the Bible. And I said, Keith, what do you reckon to Luke 16? And he said, nobody teaches on Luke 16. Nobody preaches on Luke 16. And when you read it, you've got to go, yeah, I get that. Because let's read it out together. It says, there was a certain rich man, this is Jesus talking to his disciples, who had a steward, and an accusation was brought to him that this man was wasting his goods. So he called him and said to him, what is this I hear about you? Give an account of your stewardship, for you can no longer be my steward. In other words, he got sacked because he was fiddling. Right? So the steward said within himself, what shall I do? For my master is taking the stewardship away from me. I can't dig. I'm ashamed to beg. I've resolved what to do. That when I am put out of the stewardship, because he knew it was coming, it was definitely not going to be revocable, they may receive me into their houses. Because where else would he live? He lived in his master's house all this time. So he called every one of his master's debtors to him and said to the first, how much do you owe my master? And he said, 100 measures of oil. So he said to him, take your bill, sit down quickly and write 50. Then he said to another, and how much do you owe? So he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said to him, take your bill and write 80. So the master commended the unjust steward because he had dealt shrewdly. That's the word that we're thinking about tonight, this word shrewdly. What does shrewdly mean? And Jesus goes on to say, for the sons of this world, this lot, right, are more shrewd in their generation than the sons of light. Well, no wonder nobody preaches on that one. What's that actually saying? And I say to you, this is Jesus, make friends for yourselves by unrighteous mammon, this stuff, that when you fail, they may receive you into an everlasting home. Of course, we also know that in giving unrighteous mammon, right, we get blessed. And that takes us into everlasting home. Is that what he's talking about? Who knows? And then he goes on to say, he who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much. And he who is unjust in what is least is unjust also in much. Therefore, if you have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, this stuff, who will commit to your trust the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in what is another man's, who will give you what is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon, as we've already discovered. Mammon flows as a result of walking with the Lord, being generous and all the things we've talked about. But that's a very interesting scripture, isn't it? Because it talks about us being as shrewd as the people in the world. In other words, don't lose your brains just because you've become a child of light. You're still living here. You're still walking here. You still know more about that than you do that, believe me, because you've lived there longer, right? You've picked up the ways of the world. But don't lose your brains, but do it right in God. I think that's the real key to that. But he's talking about stewardship. And when we think about what is stewardship, well, I looked up some dictionary definitions, biblical dictionary definitions. When I find it, is that the one? Oh, let's see. Should be. Sometimes it's a bit temperamental, this thing. Right, number 4, stewardship. Here we go. Come on. I thought I had all this open before it came out. Okay. It's not doing its thing for me. Anyway, just talk amongst yourselves for a minute. Discuss Luke 16, right? What does it really mean? What is the Lord saying to you? Because it's not an easy one, is it? It really isn't. Fortunately, I've got a reserve supply, not money, of on stewardship up here. Okay. So the master commended the unjust steward because he had dealt shrewdly. Not because he'd put things right, not because he'd repented. He didn't say anything about him, what his status was as a good person or a bad person. And he says, for the sons of this world are more shrewd in their generation than the sons of light. And it goes on, make friends, etc. Right, so this brings us to the concept of shrewdness, which is what tonight's all about, really. What does the word shrewdness mean in the Bible? It means having or showing a clever awareness or resourcefulness, especially in practical matters. We do not lose our brains just because we become a Christian. I know we do it first, and we do all that, and it's great, and we tell people and everything else, that's brilliant. But we have to realize we live in the real world and walk in the real world. Another definition said the quality of having or showing good powers of judgment. There's a thought. We're called to make good judgments. If we're going to judge the world with Jesus when he comes again, we've better get some practice. Why not? Discerning awareness and hard-headed acumen. Using your head, not just your heart. See, as Christians, we often just run from this, don't we? God will sort it all out. Well, hang on a minute. He's given you the ability to create wealth. He's given you abilities, right? Where are you between you? What is God saying to you about this situation? And so on. And then, of course, in the context of us in everything, God created the world, and everything in it is his. So all this stuff here, under our control, is his. The Lord's. We might think we own a load of money. We might think we own property. We may think we own goodness knows what. We may think that we've done it our way, but it's all his. And I remember as a choir boy in the Anglican service, I don't know why, but it's always struck out with me that the vicar had this big gold platter, right? And when the collection was taken, all the money came up to the front and was tipped out on the platter. And he used to go to the front, and one of the little prayers he prayed was, all things come of thee, O Lord, and of thine own do we give thee. Whew. It is. So we're only giving back to him when we give to the church or to charities or whatever. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, the Bible says. Psalm 50, 10-12. For every beast of the forest is mine, and the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know all the birds of the mountains, and the wild beasts of the field are mine. This is God saying this. If I were hungry, I wouldn't tell you, for the world is mine and all its fullness. He doesn't need us to feed him, right? It's all his. If he wants a big beefsteak, just knock off a cow. Why wouldn't you? Right? Everything in the world is his. Therefore, we are temporary stewards of what we have, whether it's a lot or a little. And that's what we're going to look at tonight. 1 Timothy 6:7 reminds us, for we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. Money is not evil, but the love of money is. Chase this stuff, it's evil. Do it this way, you'll probably get it anyway, as you saw last week, as long as you take action, as long as you act on what God is showing you, telling you, asking you to do. And goes on to say, but godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world, with the warning that seeking just money is dangerous for the soul. So if we just seek money, it's dangerous. And then it goes on to say, this is me, but if we have food and clothing with these, we will be content. But those who desire to be rich can fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires, and plunge people into ruin and destruction. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. Chase that, you walk away from that, generally. Because this becomes the number one driving force. Anybody been involved with MLM, multi-level marketing? We have. It consumes you because it's so exciting when you get into it. You spend all your life trying to find people to join your network, trying to find people, having meetings, going to meetings, all that sort of stuff. It absolutely consumes you. And you're not really doing it to chase the mammon, although the mammon's very nice. You're doing it because it's exciting and it's new, but it's definitely over there unless you do it with a God conscience as well. So stewards are managers, and stewards are to be found faithful. Jesus taught this in the parable of the talents. We all know the parable of the talents. I'm not going to go through it now because you're getting two for the price of one tonight. How about that? Yeah, you're getting a bog off. Buy one, get one free. Yeah, I'm the free one. There's an interesting thing, though, in the parable of the talents. You know that the one who didn't do anything, he just was, frightened that his master was a real nasty piece of work and would beat him round the head. So he buried the talent and he had nothing to show for it, whereas the others went out and invested it and did all sorts of things. And the master said, well, you could have even put it in the bank. You would have got some interest. But in them days you did. You don't now. And you know why you don't now? Because they don't need your money, quite frankly. They can produce money from thin air. And he says, but I was afraid and went and hid your talent in the ground. Look, there you have what is yours. And I'm good. I've given you it back. Yeah, no. But the Lord answered and said to him, you wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I haven't sown and gather where I haven't scattered seed. So you ought to have deposited my money with the bankers, and at my coming I would have received back my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. Now, get this. There was one doubled it to 10. One doubled it, I think it was, to 4. And there was this guy who didn't take any action, really. Quite a lazy so-and-so. But I love this bit, because in verse 29 of Matthew, wherever we are, it says, for to everyone who has more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. And that's exactly what happened here. The master gave the extra talent to the man who had the most. He had 10, and he took it away from the guy who did nothing. And cast the unprofitable servant into the outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Stewardship is very important of all the master's goods. And our master is God. I've said it before. I find this really funny. This is why I keep saying it again. We came into this life with absolutely nothing. And guess what? You go out of this life with absolutely nothing. You might have your best suit on or your best dress on. You might have rings and jewelry, but that stays in the ground. You go with nothing. Therefore, everything in the middle belongs to God. It's logical, isn't it, really? When you really think about this stuff, it makes an awful lot of sense. So, tonight we're going to start with looking at being good stewards in our homes, with our home finances, and what we do with our money, what we do, which side of this we operate on, and how we can improve, if you like, the blessing. Maybe put some things right. So my question to you is, at the end of the month, do you have more money than month? Or do you have more month than money? Don't answer it, but it's a good thought, isn't it? I.e., money left over to save, or do you have more time to twiddle your thumbs because you've run out of money? See, running out of money is an horrendous situation really to be in. We had a lovely young guy came to us as a trainee teacher, stayed in one of our rooms. Really nice guy. When he graduated, obviously, qualified, as past his first year, his money just shot up and up and up, right? But the daft thing was, the more money he had, the more money problems he had. It was just weird. And he finally started missing his rent, and that's always a good sign that there is a problem, right? And he finally talked to me, and when I asked him about his rent, and he said, to be honest, Colin, he said, I've got serious money issues. I said, how come? I said, you must be on, 32,000 a year by now, third year in teaching. Yeah, he said, I am. He said, but I got into debt. And he said, I've been taking payday loans. Wow, we all know about them, 1,600% interest. And that was, I think it's still legal, although they're not advertising them now. But what he'd also done was, as most people do, get themselves into debt and get all the threatening letters and everything else, he took out another payday loan to pay off the payday loan. So now he was twice as bad out. And then he took another payday loan to pay off the payday loans that he could. And this guy was earning really good money. Not very wise at all. He wasn't a Christian. So we recommended him to an organisation called Christians Against Poverty. And I would like to welcome to the stage tonight my really good friend, Paul Standage. His wife, Yvonne, started coming to our church now, which is really good, because Paul is a CAP trainer with Christians Against Poverty. Them people. You better take this.
How does this work, actually?
Yeah, it goes over your ear.
Oh, do you like that?
The other way around. The other way around.
Quite like that, actually.
Oh, you're left-handed, aren't you? Oh,
Yes.
there you go.
So I'll use another ear. I think that's about right, is it? You have to put this in your pocket as well.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask Paul, is we on?
Yeah, I think so, actually.
Am I on? Are we on? Yes, we are. So I'm going to ask Paul a few questions about Christians Against Poverty, because it is a really, really brilliant organisation for helping people to get out of debt. They can do all sorts of amazing stuff that the ordinary person doesn't even know is possible, like stop loans, put loans on hold, all sorts of things. So, Paul, first question. Give us a brief overview of CAP Money and you as a CAP Money coach, because that's what Paul is.
Yes. Well, Christians Against Poverty was actually founded by a guy called John Kirby in Bradford in 1996. And they're actually based at Jubilee Mill. And there's a great story in terms of how this started about. In fact, I've brought the book tonight if anybody wants to borrow it to read. And there's quite a lot in that book. But CAP, Christians Against Poverty, helps people get out of debt. That's its sole purpose. And it provides a really great professional and friendly debt counselling service. And all the help and advice they give the customers is all free. It doesn't cost them anything. And over the 25 years of existence, they've literally helped thousands of people. These people have been lifted from despair and released from the burden of anxiety and worry over their finances. Now, the impact of helping people out of debt is immense. For instance, marriages have been saved, children have food on the table, and many have been driven to the edge of suicide, but these have had new hope. And that's quite difficult to imagine if you haven't been through it yourself. Now, debt is a huge problem in the United Kingdom, and at the heart of many people's problems is a lack of knowledge about how to manage money. Now, few are taught how to budget, and the concept of saving is alien to many. So hence, I decided to train as a CAP Money coach a good few years ago. I've actually run CAP Money courses with others from the church we used to go to. And the idea of the course is it's designed to empower people to regain control of their money. Now, the CAP Money system is very simple, but it's basically there to encourage people to know what is happening with their money and plan for the future. Now, just one final thing I would say, I'm not a financial advisor by any means, and the information that we're going to give tonight is just given you in good faith, so we don't want anybody suing you or anything like that at the end of the night.
Yeah, okay. That's good. Yeah. So in terms of being able to manage our money effectively, Paul, what would you say is one of the most important things we need to do?
Right. Well, I think one of the most important things we need to do is building a budget. I think building a budget is the key to getting on the road to better money management. And I've actually given you, or Yvonne's given you, a one-page handout. This is the old-fashioned way. It's pen and paper, as it were, but there are modern methods. If you go on some of the websites, some of the banks, for instance, have got modern methods where you can do it online, put the figures in, and it'll print out automatically. But this is like the old-fashioned approach of how to produce an income and expenditure worksheet. So using that sheet, obviously you can't do it now, but I think the first thing to do is to list all the money that you receive in a month. So you've got the income and all the outgoings, your outgoings or expenditure. And at the top of the sheet, you've got take-home salary. So most people here, I suspect, have got jobs. You're paid a salary or a wage, okay? So that would be your monthly income on the top in the right-hand column of how much pay you get per month. For those of you who are married, got partners, you'd put their salary down as well, assuming they were working. You might have income from things like child benefits, tax credits, and those that are retired, they might be on pensions. I know 1 or 2 people self-employed, so in which case it would be your take-ins, but it would probably be your average take-ins over the year worked out per month. So add that up, and that would give you the total income for your household per month. That's the incomings, as it were. Now, when you're doing this, it's helpful to have bank statements available. A lot of these are online nowadays, and things like bills that you pay, monthly payments. Now, your regular monthly payments are things that you pay regularly every month by direct debit or standing order. So that will be things like your rent or your mortgage that you pay every month. It might be things like your council tax that you pay every month, or even the water rate. And those items that go out regularly, I suggest you put them down the left-hand column. And then there's a middle column, and it's called cash. And the cash column is used for recording practically everything else that you spend. All your day-to-day spending, things like your petrol, your food when you go shopping, your train fares and your bus fares, that would all go under the cash column as expenditure. And then there's a final column on the far right, and that's for things that you know about that are coming up in the future. Things like Christmas time. Christmas time, we tend to buy Christmas presents and things and spend quite a bit of money. And also birthdays and things, thinking about how much you can spend on birthdays. So what you can do is you can put in the right-hand column the cost that you're likely to incur for spending for things that you know in the future as such. So once you've done this, if you do this slowly and logically and you do it accurately, this should give you a clear idea of what is happening with your money. And as you go through the process, you may uncover a few problems. But if you do, then don't worry, don't panic, because there's always a solution if you uncover problems. It's just that now you've uncovered something that was already there. And having discovered something, you can actually do something about it, really. So that's an example of an income and expenditure worksheet for you to have a look at and take home with.
Do you find, Paul, that most people will go to that extent to actually face the fear?
No, I think most people tend to hide, actually. They hide and they bury their head in the sand, to be honest, I think.
Yeah. So that's not really a hallmark of a good steward then, is it? If you don't face what the issues are. Because if we don't know, it's like setting off on a journey, isn't it? You know, without a map. You might want to get to Scotland, but if you haven't got a map, you might go out to Doncaster wrong and end up somewhere else. And that's why I'm a firm believer with Paul that we should have good money management, if we're good stewards for God in particular, that we know what we've got, what we can do with it, and where it's going to take us. And I think that's important. Okay? Yeah. Okay, so we've produced our budget, right? And don't forget, it's not a tablet of stone. You don't have to live with it every month, but it just shows you, right, where things are at. And you can refer to it every now and again. You can update it as more money comes in or as more costs come in, but you know where you're at. You see, one of the problems that we find being landlords is Christmas time. Not for us. It's because that's when the rents stop, right? Because people don't have money. They haven't budgeted for, like, Christmas. They've built up the Visa cards, and guess what goes? The roof over their heads. Now, that has got to be stupid, risking the roof over your head, isn't it, Paul? Paul has property, so he knows what I'm talking about. Definitely. When people risk the roof over their heads, they are in Queer Street without a shadow of a doubt. So it's really, really good to know where you are, to know what we can spend at Christmas, to know where we need to get more money into our budget from. Because it's not just about looking after your expenditure, is it, Paul? It's about looking after your income as well. What can you do to bring more income in? Like I said before, what can you sell? What can you put on eBay? What can you put on these things for sale around the town in all these different areas? You don't have to sell, I'll tell you, when you put stuff on there. So it's not just like one-way traffic. It's to give you the best, or one, shall we say, not necessarily you, the best possible opportunity of being a great steward of God's stuff, which is amazing. Okay, so we've produced our budget, and we know where our money is going. So what tips could you suggest to manage our money?
Right, okay, so we've got the budget done, and once you've completed your budget, I think firstly you need to ensure that it balances. Now, what do I mean by the word balances? Well, by balances, what I mean is that there's more income coming into the household than going out. Okay, if there's not, we've got a problem that we need to address first of all. But assuming that there is for the moment, then what we're trying to do is to make improvements to get more surplus cash left at the end of the month. And there's a number of ways we can do this. It's not rocket science, but one of the things that you could do, for instance, is actually to increase your income. Try to increase your income per month so that you've got more income than what you had before. So what might you do? Well, if you're working, for instance, you might be able to work a few extra hours, do a bit of overtime. That would be one way of producing some income. If you live on your own and you live in a fairly big house, you might be able to rent a room out, for instance, if you feel happy with that, which might give you some extra company as well. Or you could even, for instance, maybe find a extra part-time job, just work a few extra hours if you wish. Or you may be eligible for benefits. It might be worthwhile doing a check to see if you qualify for anything that you're not claiming for. And if you've been working for the same employer for so many years, it might be worth asking him to see if you're entitled to a pay rise, particularly if your pay hasn't gone up. There's a skill shortage at the moment, and you might be able to convince your employer that you're actually due a rise. So one way to improve your finances is to see if you can improve your income or increase your income. But the second thing that you can do, obviously makes sense, is to decrease the expenditure, the amount of money that you are spending per month. For example, why not review each item on your budget and see if you could cut that out altogether? There might be some items that stand out you can get rid of 100% that you no longer need. Now, it may be that gym membership you took out pre-COVID, which seems a long time ago, which you've hardly used. You may have had good intentions to go sort of 3 or 4 times a week, get a bit fitter, but you've hardly been. Is it time to ditch that gym membership? And what you could do is you could perhaps go walking instead, or maybe go for a jog a few nights a week, which is free and not going to cost you anything. It could be a TV package that seemed like a good idea. You've got the TV package to watch all these films and drama, but you've hardly used it. Is it time to ditch that TV package? That's something that if you've taken out, you might be able to cut out completely. So look at any items on your list that you think you might be able to cut out, and it's completely out of the budget. Now, the second thing that you might be able to do is, can you cut back on some items? In other words, you're not cutting them out, but you are cutting back. So, for example, you might be the sort of person who's at home, and every night you've had a busy day at work, and you just order a takeaway. You know, you've got into the habit of eating takeaways. In fact, you're having takeaways nearly all week because you're so exhausted and you can't be bothered to do any cooking. Now, takeaways are going to cost you, obviously, quite a bit of money. But it may be that you might decide, well, I'll tell you what, I'll cut down on the takeaways I'm eating. Rather than having them 4 or 5 times a week, I might have them only once or twice, which will save quite a bit of money. So that's one example where you can cut back on what you spend. You're not cutting it out, you're cutting back. Another example, you might be the sort of person who likes to go everywhere in their car, even short distances. Instead of walking, you get your car out. So why not consider, on short journeys, leaving your car on the drive and going on short walks for half a mile, or even getting your bike out, which would save, obviously, fuel in your car, keep you fitter, and it would be good for the environment as well. So that's cutting back on activities. And the third thing you could do, which is really a biggie here, is you could cut costs. And everything on your budget you could look at and go through methodically and try to cut costs, and you could save quite a bit of money. So you've got increasing your income, you've got cutting things out, cutting back, and cutting costs.
Brilliant. So why should we, what's the purpose of having more money or cutting the costs so we can have more money, Paul? What would you say?
Well, I suppose in the kingdom, we're looking at investing the kingdom for growth and maybe sort of trying to get more people, trying to, I was going to say convert Christians, but we're trying to spread the gospel for evangelism, all sorts of things. There's 101 million good charities and things out there and causes that we could spend our money on, as it were, really. Yeah. And we are good stewards, like you mentioned earlier on, good stewards of our money, as it were.
Yeah. We can only do that, though, if we've got more money left at the end of the month than we have month. Because if we have more month than money, we can't, which is quite interesting. Okay, so have you got a personal example of how to cut costs?
Right, well, I've got a good one, actually, because this is a personal example. Most of my life I worked in the railway industry, and I used to commute up to York by train on a daily basis. Now, in days gone by, I used to catch the bus every morning, and we actually live in the Wheatley Hills, up near the Wheatley Hills shops. I used to catch the bus from up in the Wheatley Hills into town every day, which cost £2. And I used to do it every day. But because the bus service was unreliable, I used to leave my home a bit early, well, quite a bit early, to be honest, because I was worried about the bus not turning up. And the question is when it turned up rather than if or maybe it turned up. And the fact was then I got to the station quite early. So I was wandering around the station thinking, well, what shall I do now? Just waiting for my train to arrive. So I ended up buying a coffee on the station. And to get a cheap coffee in them days, it was £1.95. If you got a specialised one, you were well into the £2 and above, as it were. But I got a £1.95 one. And this became a regular habit. So every day I was spending £1.95 on the buying the coffee and £2 on the bus. And this went on for quite some time. And then until the train arrived, and then the bus company decided to put up the fare. So it was going up from £2 to £2.20, and I thought, well, this is getting a bit silly, this. So I decided, just on the spur of the moment, I'll tell you what, I'm going to walk into town. I'm going to walk those 2 miles. And I started walking, and I'm a fast walker, actually. I'm a very fast walker. There's not many people overtake me, but I'm a fast walker. And it actually took me 30 minutes to walk that 2 miles from our house to the station. 30 minutes. And I'm thinking, gosh, it's not much faster on the bus than what it is for me walking. I'm saving this money. And then I started doing that every day, and I actually enjoyed it. It was like a real buzz just getting to work, and I loved it, actually. I got into a situation where I'd leave a bit later, so the train was about to come in when I arrived on the station. So, of course, then I didn't have time to get the coffee. I was straight on the platform on the station, and I had the coffee when I got into the office in York. So that became my daily routine, as it were. And so over a period of time, I became very fit exercise. I became a lot less stressed because I wasn't wondering whether the bus was going to turn up or not. And I saved a lot of money. That worked out at almost £1,000 a year saving just by changing my lifestyle over a year, really. And I've never stopped, never changed back, really. So that's what I've done. And I was walking 10 miles a week just to get to work. I used to catch the bus back, mind you, but I used to walk one way. That's it.
Is that worn out? That really is a really good story. Yeah. It just shows that although you didn't set off to do what you did to save money, it was a natural consequence of the fact that we changed his habits, changed his lifestyle. And I really believe that's how the Lord works, that when we do things that give him opportunity to bless, maybe change our lifestyle or just something, right? It's not the same old anymore, and things start to happen, things start to change. So, cracking story, that, Paul. Have you got any more stories to tell about managing money?
Right.
Are there any interesting ones you would like to share with us?
Right. Well, I've got another good story, actually. And this is relating to one of my friends. He's a good friend. He's still a very good friend. I've known them years. It's a true story. And quite some time ago now, one of my friends was having difficulty getting to grips with his money. In fact, it was normal for him to be overdrawn quite a bit every month. He just didn't know where it was going. And at the end of the month, he ended up paying excessive bank charges. In fact, regularly, the bank kept on writing to him, and the letter asked him to come in because they wanted to speak to him about why he was overdrawn and his affairs and things, and this happened regularly. And he said to me, he said, well, do you know what, Paul? He says, I feel like a naughty child at school. I said, being called in to see the headmaster every so often. And I said, well, I'm sorry to hear that. I said, but why don't you consider changing banks? I said, there's a particular bank on the high street at the moment that's offering you a £100 bonus for simply joining up. £100 in your pocket. I said, it's quite a bit of money. I said, and they do all the switching for you. So anyway, he decided to go down that road. He decided he was happy with it and he was going to change banks and all the rest of it, really. So we initiated the switch. Now, when we went through his bank statement, there were a few entries in there that he didn't recognise, and it mounted to quite a bit of money. We're looking at over £100 a month going out of his account, and he hadn't got a clue where it was going. And I said, you must know where this is going. I said, it's your money. And he says, no, I'm sorry, I don't. So I said, well, I'll tell you what then. We'll just delete those entries for the moment. We won't carry them forward, and we'll just see what happens. I said, if you don't know where it is, we'll just delete it. So we did. Now and then, things changed across, and 7 weeks later, he got a phone call from his ex-wife, who was rather annoyed that he'd not paid the last month's credit card bill. And the fact is, they'd been divorced a good while, but he hadn't realised he was still paying her bills. So the point I'm making here is, check each item carefully on your statement and query anything you don't recognise, particularly because it's easy to be paying for things that you don't know about or something else, really. So.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, how many of us sign up for, I don't know, things like Norton antivirus or something like that, or even your car insurance? Before you know where you are, they send you a bill, well, they send you a letter saying, oh, by the way, like me at the moment, your car insurance is due on the 9th of February. This is the new price. And I look at it and go, no, it isn't. Because they will automatically switch you. You know, you've got to be switched on. We're called to be God's stewards, aren't we? We've got to be switched on. So check out car insurance when it comes around. Check out all these things. Check out your bank statement. See what's going out. Check out your Visa card every month. Look for interest-free deals if you use Visa card. They're absolutely fantastic when you're doing a refurb. Yeah, as long as you pay them off on time, every time. Yeah. Okay. So, any other stories, Paul?
Well, not. I think we're moving on to.
All right, item 6.
Item 6 then now. Okay. I've got some more stories to tell as we move down, really.
Right.
Yeah.
So clearly, cutting household costs is a big thing. Have you got any further ideas that you would like to share?
Right. Well, what I have done for you, I did this a while ago on the Cap Money course, Money Saving Ideas, and I updated it because things have changed over the years. So I've given you a copy of this 25 money saving ideas, which is just basically common sense, basically, but things that you might have thought about or not for you to take away and read. But some interesting points there. But hopefully there'll be something on there for everybody. I'd like to think that everyone's got something they can take away and use and save some money at the end of the day. There's quite a lot on there, which you've all got a copy. Now, most of these are common sense. I'm not planning to go through the whole lot, otherwise we'll be here all night, and that's probably a relief to everybody. But I thought I'd just mention 3 of them on the list, if that's okay. And the first one I thought I'd mention about was credit cards, which is number 3. Now, credit cards, I'll just read what I've put on the script. It says, warning, use wisely. And you notice I've put that in bold and it's underlined. And it says cards should normally be paid off in full every month to avoid excess interest payments. Making the minimum monthly payment is likely to incur significant charges. Some providers offer new customers as much as 24 months 0% interest on new purchases and or 0% interest on balance transfer, but there is normally a transfer fee. Before making an application, you can normally check your eligibility without affecting your credit score. And also, Section 75 law means your credit card provider must protect purchases over £100 for free, meaning you could get your money back if there's a problem or the company purchased from Caesar's trading. So there's quite a bit there. I'll just point out a few things. One is, ideally, you want to get into the habit of paying your credit cards off every month in full. Yeah. And if you haven't got a direct debit set up to pay that off, as in by the card company, it is actually worth doing that. Then you're not going to miss a payment and you're not going to incur any interest. Making the monthly payment on a credit card is very, very, very expensive, and it'll take you a long time to pay off anything because you're paying mainly interest. So, for instance, I think Colin already mentioned about if you're interested in doing a project like Colin is, it might be worth getting a new credit card out, for instance, with 0% interest and making your purchases on the card. But make sure if you do that, you've got the money to pay it off in full once the interest-free period comes to an end. Yeah. And equally, if you're the unfortunate person and you've got debt on your credit card, you can't afford to pay it off, then consider taking out another card, possibly, to do a balance transfer at the 0% APR. But for doing that, there is a transfer fee normally, about 2.9 or 3%. But at least once you've done that, you're not paying any interest. But there's an important clause on these cards. Sorry. That's the Section 75 law, which I thought I just might mention about. I've got an interesting story about the 75 law. A few years ago, we purchased a marble fireplace. We went down to a shopping workshop that manufactures these things, and unfortunately, we paid for this marble fireplace using a credit card. But when the marble fireplace arrived, we found it couldn't be fitted, and it couldn't be fitted because it had been cut wrong. It hadn't been manufactured right. So there it stood for several weeks, which was a bit unfortunate. Now, it was about the Christmas time period, and so after Christmas, I tried to contact the supplier, but it turned out they'd stopped trading. I'd left various messages on the machine, on the answer machine. They didn't get back to me, and it turned out they'd stopped trading, and it went into an insolvency company had been appointed. So I rang the credit card company and I explained the situation. I said, look, we've got this fireplace, we've paid a lot of money for it. I said, it's not fit for purpose, we can't fit it, and it's just stood there. And I said to them, I'm seeking to claim my money back from you under Section 75. And they said to me, well, what you need to do is you need a letter from the installer saying it's not fit for purpose. You'll also need a copy of the receipt or the invoice, and you need to obviously put that together with the letter as well. So I sent this information off. I think I followed it up a couple of weeks later to check they had all the information they needed. And then several weeks later, long and behold, that money magically appeared on my statement as a credit on the credit card statement. So I got paid back the full amount of money I'd paid for that fireplace under the Section 75 rule from the credit card. So these are added protections that's worth having. So if you pay for anything on your credit card over £100, it has that protection built in, and it doesn't cost you anything. So I then contacted the insolvency company, and I said to them, I've got a fireplace here. I said, technically, this is now yours. I've been paid out for it. Do you want to come and collect it and take it away? But they were not interested at all. They said, no. So it's not worth our while. They said, keep it yourself, dispose of it, or what have you. We're not interested, really. So we ended up keeping it. So we then thought, well, what are we going to do? So we went down and visited a local marble fireplace manufacturer in Bentley, just over the bridge, and thinking we'd have to buy a new replacement. And I said to him, just being a bit cheeky, I said, look, I've got a marble fireplace, I've just bought it, I can't fit it. Is there anything you think you might be able to do with it? And I showed them some photographs on my phone. And they said to me, well, can't promise you, but I think we can recut it and make it work for you. Leave it with us. So we did. And then a couple of weeks later, they came back and they said, that's fine, really. So we took this marble fireplace back. It was brand new, been refitted. It was fitted by the fitter, and it only cost us £95 for the remedial work, and it looks great. So that's quite a big saving, as it were. Blessed. So that's on credit cards, really. So that's the first one. The second one is on pensions. Now, pensions is probably a boring topic, particularly if you're fairly young. But as you get older, you start getting a bit more interested in pensions, actually. But on the script, it says, check your national insurance record and your government pension forecast, which you can do online. There are circumstances when it may be beneficial to make voluntary national insurance contributions if you have gaps. Check any works pensions and request regular pension forecasts. You could also open an additional self-invest personal pension, which is known as a SIP scheme. And for taxpayers, the pensions provider will normally claim a 25% tax refund from the government on your behalf, which is also added to your account. And it says, do not assume because you have worked all your life, you will get a full pension. Okay, so the first point there, if you want to check your national insurance record and your government pension forecast, you can do that, and you've got to log on to the government gateway scheme. So they check your ID, you need your passport, your driving license, all sorts of questions. But once you've done that, you can print off your national insurance record and it'll tell you which years you've worked and whether you've got a full qualifying year, whether you haven't, and also your pension forecast and how much you've paid. The full pension at the moment is £179.60 per week as such, really. Now, anyone can open an additional pension scheme, a self-invest personal pension scheme if you want, and I say you get your tax claim back if you're a taxpayer, and you could treat that just like a normal savings scheme if you wanted, but the only downside is you can't draw anything out of your SIP until you get to the age 55 at the moment, and that might well be set to go up, but you could treat it just like another savings scheme if you wished. But the important point at the bottom, it says, do not assume because you have worked all your life you will get a full pension scheme. Now, interestingly, I've paid national insurance most of my life, except while at university. So there's 4 years of my working life, I've not paid any national insurance contributions. So on my forecast, I was expecting a full pension, but it turned out this wasn't the case. And the reason being is the pension contribution rules were changed a number of years ago. And it turns out I need another 2.5 qualifying years, which can be paid any time up to withdrawing my state pension. Now, the pension rules changed. It was the Pension Act 2014, came in on the 6th of April 2016, and it says you need 35 qualifying years to get your full pension. So, from memory, the cost of buying 1 year's national insurance contributions is about £800, which seems quite a bit of money. But it turns out, if you make the payment, the £800 for each qualifying year, you actually get your money back in about 2.5 years, okay, by receiving a greater monthly pension. So I worked out the fact that if I draw my pension at 66, which I've still got to get to that age, if I live to 69 and a half, 67, 68 and a half, 68 and a half, after that I'm winning, and if I don't live that long, then obviously I'm losing, as it were. So I'm assuming that I'm going to live my 10, which says in the Bible. I'm not going to heaven in the meantime, so I've decided to pay the £800, you see. So it's a good sort of financial thing, really. So it's worth checking your pensions, check your forecasts, check your national insurance, and also check any work pensions that you might have as well, because it'll pay dividends, particularly when you get towards pension age. And the third and last thing I'll just mention about on this sheet is mobile telephones. I've got two little stories on that one. Now, firstly, it amazes me just how much time people are prepared to pay. It amazes me just how much some people are prepared to pay for a mobile phone. £700, £800, over £1,000. It's incredible what people will pay. And it also amazes me just how much time some people end up fiddling with their phones. Wherever way you go, they're all fiddling with their phones, even the restaurants and things. But if you can live with your existing mobile phone, or you can buy a phone outright, there are some great SIM-only deals that you can get. Now, last year, I thought I get myself into the 21st century, I get myself a new button mobile phone and get used to all this technology, because my phone was really old and outdated, and it would be an embarrassment if you were a younger person, as it were, than me. So I got myself a new phone. Now, I'm not on commission here, but I decided to take out this deal with a company called Lebara. Now, Lebara, at that time, and it's still doing it now, actually, it's offering a price of £4.90 per month. Now, for £4.90, I get unlimited calls, I get unlimited texts, so I can be on the phone all day, and I also get 3 GBs of data. So it's enough to do all the news and all the other things you do, your emails and stuff like this. And the nice thing about it is it's on a 1-month rolling contract. So I'm not tied in for months at a time. I can cancel at any moment, and it's only £4.90 a month. And I was also able to keep my original telephone number by getting the pack code from my previous provider, which came almost within minutes, and within a couple of days you've managed to get your telephone up and running with the same number, and all that works out for £58.80 per year. So I would challenge you, if you're paying more than £5 a month for your phone, then ask yourself why you're doing that. There might be some good reasons why you're doing it, because it won't suit everybody. Some people might want more than 3 GBs of data, and if so, that's fine. Or you might be into a lengthy contract at the moment, which you've got to live with, I suppose. But it's worth thinking about that. There are other deals, by the way, I've seen recently that offer the similar packages for about £5 a month. TalkTalk is one that's doing it, really. And then finally, just to finish that off on phones, the other year we had a bit of fun, me and Yvonne. We were in Skipton, and we went to the O2 shop. Now, Yvonne is on the O2 contract, and she's been on the O2 contract for quite some time, and she pays actually £6 a month, and that's what she's been paying for a mobile phone. But she once fancied getting a new handset, and the handset she found was in the O2 shop, and it was on offer, and it was actually £99, this handset, really, which that's what she wanted actually in the shop. So we went into the O2 shop in Skipton. It was a nice day. We sat down. The guy was there. And you have to go through all the rigmarole, you know, your name, rank and number. He wants to get your life history. And then he starts fiddling on his computer. And he says, right, he says, I've got a deal for you. He says, I can get you that phone on a contract. And he says, it'll be £18.99 a month, £18.99 a month. And says, that's including the phone you want. And he says, and that's for 3 years, £18.99 for 3 years. And then there was a deadly silence. And Yvonne sort of piped up and she says, I know my maths is not very good, but that seems very expensive to me. And it turns out that that O2 contract would cost £683 over 3 years. And currently, if you work out at £6 a month what she's paying for 3 years, and the £99 phone, it was only £315 like for like. So the O2 man wanted a staggering £683, and Yvonne was only estimating £315. So the savings were incredible, actually. So we came out of the shop empty-handed, actually, and that's it, really. So hopefully you'll find this useful. So take it home, have a look at it. There's a lot of information there, and your budget, and hopefully you'll save a bit of money and as well in the meantime. If it's helped you, then that's great, really. That's great.
That's brilliant, Paul. Let's throw our hands together for Paul, because he's done a lot of work for that. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah. I must admit, I've always found Paul the go-to man when it comes to deals and finance and things like that. He really does know his stuff, as you can tell. But you know what? We're all called to be good stewards of what God has put into our hands. When we change things, when we do things differently, it can open up doors of blessing. When we use our head, because that's what that first one I think is all about. Use your head, use wisdom, because that's what it's all about. And if you haven't got enough wisdom, ask God. James 1:5. If anybody needs wisdom, ask God. Then things can be very different. In terms of budgeting, is it important? Yes, it is. There is a scripture, if I could just put my hand on it, where Jesus says, if you're going to build a house, would you do it without a plan? Well, most of us live our lives without a plan, don't we? And we just say, oh, God will sort it all out. Well, he does, but if we have a plan, I'm sure we can do things a lot different, a lot better, as you saw from some of those people last week. A laissez-faire attitude is wasteful, it's untidy, it's often purchasing greater than our income. It can force us into debt, as I've already said. Think about your credit score. Now, people would sometimes say, especially Christians, well, a credit score doesn't matter. I don't borrow any money. No, but guess what? You rent a house. You need to know your credit score. They need to know your credit score. They're going to check it. Something Paul said about the phones. They will check it. They will check to see if you have the ability to pay this stuff called debt, which is the modern money, which we talked about right at day one. So your credit score is important. So look after it. And I think overall, the best thing to do is to face things. I used to shy away from money. I used to hide from money because, we also had an income coming in, things like that. Pensions, in the 60s, when I think it was the late 60s or 70s, when pensions changed, I didn't understand them. I just said, we'll buy some houses and that'll be our pension. As it happened, God took us on our word, and that's what we've done. But, an amazing thing happened to us. I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. My friend, Fraser, he said to me one day, he said, have you checked out your ICI pension? Well, both me and him only worked there till we were 21, so we're going back donkey's years. And I said, no, why? He says, well, my pension's come through from ICI. I said, get on. Anyway, it started me thinking, and pensions is something that bores me sick. I've had a few jobs where, they've paid me a company pension, but I've never contributed because it's not something I'm into. And so I started looking at them, and that particular year, I don't know whether it still stands, but you could draw 100% of whatever your pension stood at, right? 100%, not 25%, and the rest as a pension, but 100%, tax-free as well, right? So I put my hand up for that because by now we're into property. That gave us a nice deposit for a nice house that when we rented out and makes us far more money than my pension could ever bring me in. So I'd like you to think about finance. I'd like you to think about God opportunities for God to bless you, to bring finances to you, opportunities to be a good steward. I find it riveting to go through the numbers every month and see where we're at and see what we've spent and see what we've got to spend. I just enjoy it. It's something I used to hate. But I enjoy it. It's quite exciting, actually, when you start looking at your numbers and see what it actually means, because you can do something about it. And when God gets hold of it, you can do a lot about it, because he wants you, right, to be a shining light. No good being poor. You can't be a shining light being poor unless you live among the poor. Then you can shine. You see what I'm saying? So, yes, we've all got our godly path. You've got to work out where it is. But God wants to bless us, and he wants us to do things right in him. As I said, planning is actually fun. It opens up the mind to possibilities and give the Lord the opportunity to drop you a blessing portal, as I call them. Awesome. So I think that's where we'll finish for tonight. And next week we'll look at some blessing portals. And then the following week we'll look at a summary of where we're at and what we've got out of it. And I'd like you to think about any testimonies that you've got about blessing, about where you've seen God work in your life, because you work in this system, biblical economics, and not this system. Because this is the stuff that he uses to bless us with, as you saw last week with all those multimillionaires.